Six years after it was announced, the first cameras on New Zealand commercial fishing vessels will go live tomorrow. Initial installations will cover 23 boats, followed by a further 70 by the end of the year. But there are fears it'll mean fewer real eyes and ears on boats, human observers, that is. Greenpeace's Russel joins us now. Morena, Russel, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, actually. It's been a while. Can we talk about these cameras? It's taken 6 years. And so today, I guess, or tomorrow, will be a good day, right?
Yeah, it's an important step forward. It's taken 6 years since the decision was made to do it, but of course we had to campaign for many years before that to get to the point where the government agreed to put them in.
So why are they so important to have in these boats then?
So if you think about the fishing industry, left to its own devices, it pretty much always collapses fish stocks because they just overfish, and we've seen it with orange roughy and lots of others. So you can have some kind of sight over what's going on to control the industry when they land the fish at the shore, assuming there's no corruption at the shore, then you can keep an eye on that. But what's going on out on the boats is also important. So if you're killing dolphins, seabirds, if you're catching a lot of fish and then dumping it because you decide you want to catch some other fish, which is unlawful, nobody knows what's going on. So the idea of the video cameras is you start to get a record of what's going on the boats, because the destructive activities can happen there as well as knowing what's landed. So you need some information. Human observers are a key part of it, but the video and having the cameras across the whole fleet is also a critical part of it.
Now, there are only 23 cameras being installed at this point in time, and as I said in the introduction, 70 by the end of the year. Is it enough though? Do we need more?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is, so taxpayers are paying for this, right? So this is $68 million from us in order to make sure there's proper rule following by the fishing industry, right? So we're subsidising this whole thing. And so we're rolling it over a few hundred boats to start with, but obviously we need to do the whole fleet, and that's going to take some time. And the only reason we have to do this is because there's so much evidence of illegal behaviour by the fishing fleet, the commercial fishing fleet. So they catch dolphins, kill them in the nets, and then they don't report it. They catch seabirds, they dump fish overboard. There's heaps of evidence about it because of the compliance investigations. In the past, Ministry of Primary Industries were very reluctant to prosecute illegal behaviour in the fishing industry, but they have started to prosecute now, which is great, the big companies, but they need the evidence.
Yeah, I was going to say, why the hesitation? Is that because there hasn't been enough evidence?
Well, no. So shockingly, the head of compliance a number of years ago said publicly that they didn't prosecute big fishing companies because 5 years later they'll be back at it again. So it was because he said the culture of the industry is so bad that even if you prosecute them, they just go back to it. I think we've moved on with Ministry of Primary Industries. They were a bit captured by the industry in the past. Yeah. So let's assume they're better now than they were, but we need the evidence of what goes on out there. Because, you know, the thing about fishing is our technology is so powerful that we can absolutely deplete the oceans now. We know how to do it. And so you have to control us. It's, you know, human beings have become so good at, like, you know, destroying the environment that we have to put in place all these rules and regulations to stop industries doing it. But of course you can't have these rules work unless you have the data and the information about what's actually going on over the horizon, and that's why the videos are there. So
in terms of the videos then, how much do we, you know, it's going to capture what they're catching, right? So how much do you think it's going to stop the catching of things like dolphins or overfishing or the smaller fish?
Yeah, so the thing is that when you drag a dirty great net through the ocean, which is this very kind of barbaric system we still use, it's just these enormous nets, and you drag them along the bottom floor as well and destroy all the coral and the sponges and everything. That destruction will still happen, but it hopefully will happen within the rules, whereas previously the destruction was happening outside beyond what was even allowed. And once I think we get a better sense of what's going on out there, we'll be pushing to stop bottom trawling on seamounts, and so we'll be able to we'll campaign to improve the rules, but at least we'll be able to enforce the rules that we have. But yeah, the rules we have are too weak at the moment.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask you that. You talk about within the rules. So what are those current rules and how do they need to change?
Well, so the classic one is bottom trawling, right? So it's like it's like destroying a Coyote forest in order to catch some keriru, right? It's like you go along the ocean floor, you you destroy all the corals. Some of these corals are literally older than Jesus Christ, like they're 2,000 years old. They're very slow growing deep sea corals. You need the benthic environment, like the ocean floor. That's the nursery for the fisheries. And so you go through, you destroy all these corals in order to catch the fish that are around the coral, right? So it's totally unsustainable. And New Zealand is one of the few nations that's still doing this. Like in the South Pacific, like on the high seas in the South Pacific, there is one country in the world which is bottom trawling those seamounts and destroying them, and that is this country. So yeah, we need to change the rules, particularly around bottom trawling.
I want to go back to the cameras, and I guess the fear is that with the cameras now on these boats, that the observers, the human observers that are on these boats, will disappear. But we know that having them on there is an extra safety. Do you have that fear that eventually observers will no longer be required?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is that risk. I think that's true. But there's things cameras just can't do, right? So, you know, so there is a place for human observers, and we really need to keep human observers. But it's also true that on smaller boats, human observers, like it's hard to, you know, with smaller inshore fleet, human observers can get in the way a bit. That's one of the problems is with those smaller boats. So the cameras are great, particularly for the smaller boats. On the bigger boats, you need the cameras and the observers together. We did actually get a statement from Oceans and Fisheries Minister Rachel Brooking, who talks about the fact that the observers will remain at this point in time anyway. But overall, this is a good thing about time, right, Russell? Yeah, no, I mean, the environment movement's been campaigning on this for over a decade. Yeah. It's definitely a step forward. We were obviously having New Zealand First involved. So with that, there was a National Party government that initially agreed to it, and then we moved and there was a New Zealand First Labor government, and that slowed it right down. It was very difficult. So then once New Zealand First came out of the government, then we were able to make progress on it again. So yeah, we're really pleased. There's still heaps to do, and we need to change the rules to protect the ocean, but at least we'll have proper mechanisms to actually see what's going on so we can enforce the rules.
Russell, always lovely to see you. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Russell Norman from Greenpeace.
Pleasure, thank you.